have some special things at our place, or in our garage, or in our storage unit, right, that reflect our interest in the history of baseball. So in focus, I'm just going to look at 4 particular things that are significant to me about Ted's career. The basic introduction is this. I was born and raised here, as Tom has said. My dad was born here, and he graduated from high school, San Diego High, in 1936. And so one of the things, as was mentioned earlier, that our family back then was to sit on the boxcars on the railroad tracks over the right field fence at Lane Field. How many of us here ever remember Lane Field itself, the old wooden ballpark? It stood as long as Earl Keller said before the termites ate the whole thing. But in any case, they sat on the boxcars, and my dad would describe one of the classic moments in watching a Padres game from the boxcars is when you realize the locomotive had hooked up and the train was about to move. So what did you do? How long could you sit on the boxcar and watch the game until it was dangerous to get off the train, right? So he told the story, I won't go beyond this, told the story of watching this particularly interesting Padres rally from beyond the right field fence. They're on the boxcars, they're aware the train hooks up and it begins to move. And they don't want to leave the game, but the train's leaving. And so ultimately, it's not the George McDonald train with the 100-mile home run. But the train was leaving, and finally they all decided the rally was more important. And so they stayed on the train. Eventually, he said they parked it about 2 miles away, but they saw the rally from a distance, and that was their reward. They had to walk back to Lane Field and go from there. So kind of fun. Ted's experience 5x5 card that's in my little collection, signed by who? Can you see the name at the top? Frank Schellenbach. Ted is in the middle. Bobby Doerr is at the bottom. Where did this card come from? Well, we tell our grandchildren when they visit, we have 3 kids and 6 grandkids, we say, everything in this house has a story. Let us know if you want to know the story of anything in this house. We have the most wonderful conversations as the kids say, what about that? Where did that come from? So the story behind this, if I may, there's a wonderful shot from 1939 of Ted and Bob Doerr, lower left-hand corner, and there's Frank Schellenbach from the team picture on the right. This came from a guy named Jack Smalling. I doubt if anyone will recognize R.J. Smalling, but Jack Smalling used to be one of the great autograph collectors and salespersons anywhere in the country, and he specialized in 3x5 cards. So back when, got a hold of Jack Smalling and said, do you have anything with Frank Schellenbach on it? And he said, I have 2. I said, sold. And so from there, the story, a lot of us, again, have stories in our little collections. From there, Frank Schellenbach card in hand, and he had passed on by that time, early 70s, went and to a show in the spring of 1988 in Minneapolis, put on by a guy named Mansco Perry. That was his earliest business. He is today the head of the investment board of the state of Minnesota. But he began with collectibles and shows. Ted came, and can you guess how much he was signing autographs for? $10. The second piece, we've talked about Earl Keller, the sports writer for the Tribune, and Earl was barely in his 20s when he began sports writing for the Tribune in 1936 when the Padres came. Earl Keller gave me this picture of himself, lower right-hand corner, with Ted, and Ted is playing with his dog, Slugger. Okay? And so you can see Slugger at the bottom of the picture, and lower left, Ted signed this on one of his visits to San Diego, and Earl upper right, hi Jim, best from Earl Keller. As I mentioned, it was through him that I first was able to have a conversation. Ted and I had met at this show in the spring of 1988, but that got me interested because we chatted just for a moment. What really tipped the scale, if I may, and for a lot of us, our interest in baseball has a lot of seasons to it. Somebody inspired us, somebody kind of opened a door of interest and so forth. for me, it was a player a few of us may know named Joe Hauser. Joe Hauser, Unser Joe Hauser, was the home run king of the minor leagues. He finished second to Babe Ruth in home runs in the mid-20s, blew out his knee at a time when surgery couldn't fix it, so went to the minor leagues, and he just basically was sort of a first baseman who was a DH, essentially. Hauser hit 60 home runs in high minor leagues twice. And it was Hauser who preceded Ted Williams in Minneapolis fame in 1933 by hitting 69 home runs for the Minneapolis Millers. Drove in 182 runs. Just an amazing, amazing year. In any case, meeting Ted at the show in the spring of '88, then Joe Hauser at the Sabre Conference that was in Minneapolis in 1988. And Hauser said to me, "I really like talking to you." He said, "Have you ever looked up any other old timers? They'd probably enjoy it too." And that was my trigger to begin trying to contact some of the older players. The oldest I think that played was Smokey Joe Wood back in 1912 with the Red Sox, the champions there. He broke in '08, and visiting him at his house in Connecticut.